Thanks, Becky, setting expectations there. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Corinne Streichert. I'm the founder of IFECtiv and the host of the On Your Flight Today podcast. Really thrilled to be back in Hamburg. And before we get started, I just want to say a big thank you to Inflight for putting this all together. Becky and her team have done a really great job. So we'll be talking about Inflight entertainment today. And before we move on, I will get the panellists to introduce themselves.
Hello everyone, I'm Joe Leader. I'm the Group CEO of AIX, the Airline Passenger Experience Association, which also includes IFSA, the International Flight Services Association, and Future Travel Experience.
Yeah, my name is Kalderon. I'm the head of Inflight Entertainment and Connectivity in El Al, the Israeli airline.
Miguel Ferreira, onboard digital manager for TAP Air Portugal.
And I'm Ben Fuller. I'm the head of global sales for Inflight Dublin.
I'm Sam Allen. I'm the managing director of Stellar Entertainment. We are the world's longest established in-flight entertainment content service provider in the world, celebrating our 50th anniversary this year.
Great, thank you. So we've got a great panel here and ready to dive into personalisation of IFE systems and also talking about the data. So as I said earlier to the panelists, 45 minutes is not enough to cover this topic, and Tal said even 45 days wouldn't be enough, but we're going to do our best to get through that and hear some insights from our panel and offer some really great feedback on their experiences. So we're going to look at the airlines first. So Tal and Miguel, in terms of personalisation at your airline, whether it's embedded or wireless, are you able to give us some insight into what you have done, what you plan on doing, and how that's working out for you and your passengers? So, Tal?
Actually, we are exactly in the middle of a process of identify a new user interface in our in-flight entertainment system, which I think that now it's much more critical than ever to identify, especially in terms of personalization, which is the next trend in IFE and IFEC. There's a lot of insights that we are expecting to get from personalization, not just in terms of entertainment, because we know and we believe that personalization can affect all sides in the airline, meaning that entertainment, food and beverage, customer service, frequent flyer club members, all of those parties are now in the same process to identify what we would like to get exactly from personalization. We believe that the service can be much more accurate if we will know more information about the customers, our customers, and we believe that we can get it from and through the system if it will be built in the correct way, meaning that we will know better what our passenger expect from the IFE, from the entertainment, how we can serve them better in the food and beverage, how we can get more subscribers or more customers on the frequent flyer club. And according to what we saw, we can make it through the IFE system or through the connectivity or both. We are going to use a new tool by Panasonic. It's called the Interact Modular Interactive. It has a lot of advantages. One of them is that the airline can manage independently the portal and the system, which for us is very important to have the ability to update the system not on a monthly basis or not bi-monthly as it is now. We are planning to be more active in the portal, with the portal, sometimes even on a daily basis or on a weekly basis. All of those points and all of this package, we believe that can serve the customer and give us much more insights that we expect to get from the personalization issue.
So it's something that you're currently working towards with your vendor to implement?
Sorry?
It's something that you're currently working with your vendor to implement?
Yep.
Okay, great. Miguel, I know TAP Air Portugal actually started personalisation many years ago and
indeed.
was one of the first to do that. Can you share some insight into what you've been doing, how it's been working for you?
Okay. We introduced personalization to our IFE systems in 2019. I think we were kind of pioneers. And with a lot of internal discussion, lots of debates and meetings until late night, we find out that personalization needs to be frictionless, meaning no complicated logins, no downloading apps before the flight, just something simple as a number in the boarding pass. That is something, the boarding pass is something that everybody has while it's on board. That number, a 5-digit code, you introduce there on the IFE after selecting the interactive language, and then boom, you are treated by the name. You have this kind of inbox where you receive messages through the flight, recommended content, sometimes making a heads up on operational topics, where we can do a lot of things, making surveys, collecting data, promoting certain call to actions. We have this short film that you don't want to miss. So there's plenty of use cases. We build this taking into consideration 3 layers of personalization. I don't want to be here into so many technical details, but this is how it works. There's a operational layer of personalization that is related to fleet, flight, routes, everything that's tails of certain aircraft. And then we have like a more commercial layer that is related to what we know about our passenger in terms of commercial relationship. Is it a gold member? How many flights? That kind of stuff is not into the frequent flyer program. That commercial layer, and then the personal layer, what we know about him or her, age, gender, name, nationality, that kind of stuff. That is the most interesting one. But funnily enough, being the most interesting layer, it's the layer that airlines know less about their customers. This more personal related topics. And then we are not collecting huge amounts of data. We could. That's the next level, because collecting data without making nothing with it doesn't make sense. But now with the advancements in AI, and I'm foreseeing that we can collect this data, organize, and put it back to the system and provide even more interesting use cases to our passengers.
Fantastic. Can I ask, have you had any passenger feedback about the personalisation that you do offer? Can you share if it has moved the dial on your CSAT or NPS?
Yes, I mean, it's interesting. It's not only showing the name, welcome Joe Leader, it's not you. No, it's not that kind of approach, which is mainly followed by many airlines. I don't find it that interesting. Everyone that logs in is treated by the name without any doubt that is that person. And we have so many use cases, interesting use cases. For instance, we did this. We were flying a group of fans of a football team that they were flying to European Championship final or quarters or whatever, and we did this call to action to a survey to know what on their opinion what the team which team will win the game. I mean, a flight full of fans, you have two options, but none of the options was the adversary. It was only the team that of defense, the two options with the teams. It's funny. I mean, entertainment needs to be fun, right? And people share that in social networks and all. There are plenty of use cases. We did one very recently that supported a development. We are trying to find what kind of earplugs passengers are using. It's just a small call to action, personal ones or airline ones, to build a business case, to develop some functionalities on the software, that kind of stuff. I mean, the value of the data that you collect is there, and it's just a matter of extracting and making use of that.
Yeah, I definitely want to talk about the data, but I think just before we do that, Dr. Joe, AIX performs an advisory service to airlines, as you were saying previously to me, and you're obviously very familiar with what's happening in the US.
Yes.
With personalisation. From what we've heard from Israel Airlines and also from TAP Air Portugal, what are your thoughts? How does it compare with what's happening in the US?
Sure. So in the US, we have two market leaders that are out there with Delta Sync, which allows customers to be recognized as individuals that you simply basically take a picture of a QR code, it will recognize me and say, welcome on board, to your point, Dr. Joe Leader, and it will be, you're a 2 million miler, you're this close to this status, here's where you were at on your last movie, here's where you need to go. From the demo, when JetBlue Blueprint was unveiled, I got to see behind the curtain how I would be welcomed on my birthday on JetBlue, which is, in addition to getting on board and not having to scan anything and being welcomed by my name, if you are a more private person and would prefer not to have your name anytime in the future in JetBlue flights, it will remember that. Mm-hmm. It also is very JetBlue Blueprint for their screen sharing, which allows up to 5 other people to enjoy a movie with you, so up to 6 altogether. They put in some really intelligent next steps, including you can only invite a child to the movie if they're in the same P&R. That keeps someone else from another seat who's spooky from inviting someone who's a minor to watch a movie with them, which you do not want. So it's good that there are those types of protections. Where I see this going, and what I think will be most lucrative to our airlines and passengers, is it's around the world, not just with the US. I think the US has some market leadership in some areas, but I think we could be overtaken in many others. It's across your streaming platforms. If you look at the APIs that the different, more advanced airlines are using, Delta could do a call to Paramount Plus, see where they're at in different movies, have it continue what they were watching on the ground. They need users' permission to do this, but ultimately customers are happy to give permission if it means they're being served. In the same respect, I see that all the different streaming providers worldwide, you may see airlines offering a wider selection of movies to those that are members of Disney Plus or HBO Max or NBC Peacock or what have you. This is going to be the really interesting turning point, because ultimately we don't just want the airline to be tracking our preferences, we want it to tie into our other preferences in a way that serves us, but also, and we can get into this later, it's going to be very commercially beneficial to our airlines and passengers as they go through this journey.
Interesting perspective. I guess I'd like to hear from our suppliers. So Ben and Sam, obviously, Inflight Dublin and Stellar Entertainment, you partner with a lot of airlines and offer services with respect to personalisation. Can you share a little bit about your experiences partnering with airlines and some of the challenges that you've found?
Absolutely, absolutely. One of the challenges that we face is typically interfacing with the information from the airline. We know what they're watching, we know every touch they do on those screens, we know if they like TV shows or kids shows and all that stuff, but tying that back into the actual passenger, the demographic that way, and interfacing and sharing that is always a challenge. But being a global supplier, one of the advantages that we have is that we see what people are doing and watching all over the globe. So there is, even though there are some drawbacks, there's an advantage where we can work with the airline and say, hey, in this region of the world, this is what's hot and this is what's not hot. In this area, it's different. And taking that information, merging it with the airline information to create a more personalized experience, there's a ways to go from that. But we're able to offer, even just with our knowledge, to our airline partners, what is the upcoming trends, what's hot, what's available, and what people are watching based on our global nature of not only working with one specific airline, but working with a number of airlines around the globe.
Okay, interesting. And Sam?
Yeah, so I think personalization has been one of the buzzwords in the IFE industry for quite a few years now. And so a few years ago, look at Stella, we looked at, like what is personalization? And so we came up with the 3 R's. So the first one was recognize. And so, when you go on board and, your recent experience on Delta or on JetBlue, you sit down in your seat and it recognizes Joe Leader is sitting down on a JetBlue flight. Now, in that sort of, with recognition, there's not so much that a CSP can do, in the supply chain, in part of that process. The second R was resume. So once you're sitting in your seat and it's they've recognized the passenger, that passenger might have been watching something on a previous flight, and so the ability for that passenger to continue watching that content, on their new flight. Now, in that side of it, that does involve, the CSP. There are unique identifiers within metadata that, very much fall within the CSP's remit. And so, we ensure that within our enterprise resource management application, that we have unique identifiers for all, the content that we're supplying, for the in-flight entertainment system. And then the final one, is recommend. So recommending content as well, which is very much driven by metadata. So, all of the metadata that we are pulling in, we wanted to have quality metadata, deep metadata, and for that, we partnered with IMDb, TMDb, and the enterprise resource management application that we built has API functionality. So we're pulling, the metadata from IMDb and other third parties as well, and building that to be seamless and system agnostic, with airlines as well, so that we're, in order to create that personalized experience on board, we have a product and a system that is easy to implement, across varying different, hardware providers and system providers.
Interesting. I wanted to ask, do you feel different airlines have a different understanding of personalization and what it really means?
Yeah, I think, when you look, like Miguel, what you're doing at TAP is, very advanced. Like 2019, you were very early on the, on the ball there. I think there are a lot of airlines. I think every airline wants to create a personalized experience, but delivering that, can be a challenge. You need to have your entire team, internally aligned. You need to be aligned with all of your various different vendors, and that in itself is quite a challenging thing, to achieve. So in many ways, that I think is one of the biggest challenges is having everyone sort of aligned with that same vision, and goal, and in order to execute the the plan that you're looking to do. What each individual airline is looking to do with that from a personalization experience can be different. Whether that's content recognition or even personalized advertising as well, which I think is a really sort of untapped, the potentials for that are still sort of fairly untapped, and I think that's something we'll see changing, in the years to come.
And Ben, can I ask, obviously you have a streaming product, it's not embedded in the aircraft. Do you feel that makes it easier to implement more personalization versus, and unfortunately we don't have anyone in the embedded market here, but do you feel that gives you the advantage?
I don't think, because we're not connected in a lot of environments, it's hard to tie back into a connected environment where that information can come from. So it's almost like a payment system where you have to batch and save and then analyze later and then implement, and it's kind of like A/B testing the whole time. So I don't know if there's an advantage that way. But a little bit about what you commented on. I think in the question you said before about personalization, I think everybody's got a different definition of what that is.
Yeah.
And I don't think it makes sense to define it. I think every airline, every supplier, everybody is going to do it a little bit different and what works best for them. I think one of the challenges that personalization faces is over-personalization. Where's that line where we're getting into too much knowledge about someone and people start to get scared, as well as personalizing in the wrong way. And I had an experience with an airline that where I got on, I logged into it, and the recommendation for me was nothing I would ever watch. It was completely off base, and I thought, well, I don't know if I want to log in ever again, right? But I've actually been testing that same airline because I fly them a lot, and I've logged in every time, and I've made sure that I've watched the stuff that I want to watch and the manly shows and sports stuff, and it's actually grown, and it's the flying here, the recommendations were completely different than 6 months ago when I was flying with them. So that personalization, I see it's evolved over 6 months, and I don't know if there's an answer where there's a line where we need to get to or where we don't need to get to. But I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
That we're all trying to figure it out together.
Yeah, I was thinking more along the lines of to use your system that you got the personal device as opposed to something that the airlines provided. So are you able to tap in or leverage that? Because, on the phone, you've got all your information.
I'm having a hard time hearing.
Oh, sorry. I was thinking specifically about personal devices to tap into your system. Does that bring you any benefit? Because they've already got their device they live with 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, as opposed to an embedded system which the airline has provided.
Well, we do have the advantage of knowing what they're watching on. We know what devices they use, but not much more than that. We know what they're watching and what they're doing, but we don't have a lot of information on them beyond that based on the regulatory stuff that we can't get into. We can't get past that. But understanding that and understanding the technology behind it, it does give us an advantage on the content to give to that passenger.
Okay, interesting. So I do want to talk about data. So without data, there's no personalisation. Bad data, bad personalisation, potentially PR crisis. So over to the airlines. From a data perspective, we know, I think we've all been around long enough we do have data integrity issues from time to time, and those kinds of challenges with data and the mining of it, coordinating it internally if you want to tie it into your other loyalty data and systems as well. Are you able to give us some insight into the challenges? I know, Tal, you're in the planning stages, but Miguel, have you been able to tie in that data with other data that the airline might have about the passenger? Or is that something that's on the roadmap?
In the very beginning of this program, we discussed a lot about privacy and that thin line about being fun and being creepy on the on the personalization, and we realized that we don't need a high degree of personalization to make cool functionalities. Even though we are using a process that could be used by anyone, is a 5-digit PIN on your key code. Any person can spend the entire flight guessing and entering in someone's account. But the data that we have there is not sensitive by any means. It's the name, the favorites, where they left the previous movie, it's the mile status. It's not sensitive data. It could be considered like anonymous. Even though I'm guessing a 5-digit PIN in 300 passengers is like 0.05% of chances, so it's quite remote. But yes, we are not collecting the data. We know we pushed the suppliers to develop this unique ID, unique identifier for the media, because we needed that to make sure that we upload people's favorites again to the next flight and resume the last position now. But we are not using that for any other stuff. Let's say that Joe Leader is a big fan of Star Wars. And he keeps adding. Oh, you are. was moving to the favorites. I could push him a message, hey, here's your new Star Wars movie, since we're a fan. But we are not doing that. We could, and probably with AI we can make these kind of things. But right now the usage of data is very subtle, and we try not to step this creepy side of the personalization layer.
And so you're in the planning stages. Are you engaging all the various areas to bring all the data together? Is that part of the roadmap? Because obviously targeted advertising is a huge benefit of that personalisation and revenue opportunities from that. Is that something that's on the roadmap that you can share with us?
I think that one of the challenges that we have now, and especially when we have the personalization option, is first of all to convince the passenger to put his personal details. But we give him the option to limit it. He doesn't have to put all his details. And as Joe said in the previous panel, we need to make it simple as possible. It can be just only with a mail, and then we need to explain that it will assist us to give the ability to the system to identify exactly what is his preferences and how the system can assist him to get better service. Because the basic point is the passenger expects from the airline to take care of him by all means. And now we're looking for the best way to be more accurate in the service. And the only way, or one of the main way, is just through the personalization. If we have thousands of hours of content in the system, and sometimes the passenger is getting after a flight, he said, I didn't find what to watch, but you have thousands of hours and hundreds of movies. You didn't find anything to watch? Yeah, it will say the same, by the way, on Netflix sometimes, because you will get into Netflix and you didn't find what to watch. But if the system will know what he would like according to his history watching, and the system will offer him what to watch. The system will know what is the favorites that he's looking for. It will be much better for all sides. If we will know what to offer him on the food sides, if we will know that he is looking for a specific wine, because that's what he marked on the system, he will get better service from us. And this is exactly our goal when we are looking for personalization. We are not yet on the level of providing him a specific advertisements, although we know we can. We are at the basic point that we would like, first of all, to make the service more accurate by all means. And this is going to be one of our main tools, how to do it.
And Dr. Joe, from a US perspective, there's a lot of data, right? Especially with Delta. And you obviously also advise through AIX and understand some of their challenges. Are you able to share some insight into how they're working with the data challenges that they're facing to be able to push that through to offer that personal service?
Yes, let me speak a little bit ahead on one airline. So there was a story, Wall Street Journal story about United Airlines doing personalized services and personalized advertisements. While United has not yet unveiled what their official stance is, since this leaked out of United early, I think it tells a very good indicator for airlines what they need to be looking for. We know in personalization that CSAT scores tend to go up across airlines wherever they are in the world by 0.1 to 0.2 on their CSAT scores and an NPS differential of around a point, which, for every airline, every point of NPS is sacred. So anything that engages your customer is good. But what I think is missed in this is what I would call the occasional travel. So for example, I flew here on Turkish Airlines. So on Turkish Airlines, if I'm being sold a property in Istanbul because I'm connecting on Istanbul to Hamburg, wrong person, wrong market. That's ideal for someone who is a business traveler, whose first language is Turkish, or who goes to Turkey a heck of a lot, and probably should think about buying a place. So versus as what I liked, and I don't know which airline, if they've started their personalization process yet, they were trying to convince me to join in on the stopover program. They were trying, and because I was watching English language, the advertisements were engaged towards someone who was probably American that was who might want to enjoy their free stopover program, get a taste of Turkey, and then move on to their destination. I think that's the biggest opportunity. I think micro-personalization, if we're going, we should walk before we run. I think that for airlines, like Delta hasn't tackled this, but what I hope United does with their plan to do personalized advertising is to make it so that instead of advertising just to Joe Leader, that it's towards a bucket of travelers. Joe is from Atlanta and he travels this much on us and has this status with United. So we're gonna, and he already had, they look at things like they know I have status with Marriott. They're not gonna pitch me on Marriott. They know I don't have their credit card. They're gonna pitch me on their credit. So right message to the right audience at the right time means something. The airlines I get upset with is the ones that if they advertise their credit card to me one more time and already have it, I'm gonna have words with someone. I mean, where they just take over the IFE system and you have your flight attendants being the commissioned agents of the airlines and make you get their credit card, damn it. It's not fun. I can't watch my IFE movie. I have to go back to my device. So we need to be more intelligent in how we're engaging and serving, right message, right people, right time.
That's a great point. And you did bring up United. So as a passenger, how would you feel if you weren't getting that consistent personalization if you were flying on their network?
I think I'm disappointed when I get, I think the most, I watch Passengers on American, for example, which I would say of the US 3, they are the most assertive in their credit card pitch. They get really, really annoyed at getting the same pitch, especially if you're connecting in Dallas. You just, it's like, please stop. And I do have the American credit card. I think that's where you need to have the wherewithal, right message to right passenger. I believe what United will do and what American should do and Delta is don't micro-target. If I'm gonna get spooked if I was just looking at something on Facebook and then all of a sudden all my video advertisements turn to whatever product I was looking at on Facebook. That's not gonna sit well. But if I'm into an archetype where I'm like this passenger, this status, based in this location, going to this location, I'm 100% on board. And the other thing I think the passengers really want, the right advertising messages, like variety. It's where they're just hit over the head with the same hammer again and again. I think they get exhausted by it and actually decreases NPS. That's where we need to be.
Yeah, and I kind of see that as the risk because if you've got a really diverse fleet and multiple configurations and versions of software, it's probably easy to offer a generic offering, whereas you need to have a very consistent fleet. Probably smaller airlines that have less aircraft, more consistency, can probably offer more uniform personalisation across their whole fleet. But for the bigger ones, it could be a challenge just by the nature of the product and the lead time
Yes.
to deliver it. So it'll be interesting to see how that affects CSAT or NPS because if you're getting personalised offer on one aircraft, then you jump onto another one and they offer you that credit card again. Where you think, well, why did it happen there? Why did it happen here? So
I think Delta has a great example in that they've done a staged introduction of Delta Sync. And so I'm getting it, I would estimate, on less than half the aircraft I'm flying still. Every time I get it, I'm thrilled. When I don't, I'm like, it is what it is. I mean, like, I think anything that's building towards a better experience, if I get if let's say American decides to put this on 20% of their fleet, and they like, this is Joe, we're not going to pitch him the American Airlines credit card anymore because he has one. Thank you. I will take that on 1/5 less of my flights, and I will write the higher ups and say thank you, made my life better.
So I guess from a supply perspective, I just want to talk very quickly about data security. So it's obviously something, Ben, that you guys come across. to talk about some of the security measures that you kind of implement to secure the system for your data and protection?
I don't have specific examples, but I know everywhere we follow all the rules, the laws, and regulations. And specifically when there is the ability to do purchases throughout our system, we follow everything to a T. We use third parties to manage all that, so that we're not necessarily experts in that per se. We're great at content, we're great at delivering that content, integrating, working with all the airlines. And we use the experts to make sure that we are following everything to a T in that, so that those data breaches do not happen.
And Sam, you've got one of the biggest, if not the biggest, I think, airline. So you're looking at a lot of data. So are you finding, I guess, how are you guys working with that and managing that? And can you speak more to the security side of the data?
So the data that we receive is anonymous. So we're not at risk of leaking passenger information. So the data that we receive is anonymous. We then process that data and present it in ways which bring value to the client. We obviously have cybersecurity and firewalls in place, but in terms of how we're processing data, all the data we're receiving is anonymous.
So I guess, and you probably can't speak to it, but they're not looking at tying that all in together with booking data and all that kind of information. Probably not yet.
Right. Yeah. So where we're sitting as a CSP in that part of it is not linking that with booking data, rather being able to implement that metadata as effectively as possible on the in-flight entertainment system itself.
Just one last question, I guess, just out of curiosity, I wanted to ask. So, as I was researching this personalisation, it's such an intense topic. I found a quote from Jeff Bezos from 2000, a keynote that he gave, where he said, personalisation is when you go into a bar and sit down, and the bartender puts a whiskey in front of you without having to ask what you want. Do you see that happening in flight?
Yes, and the one thing that I believe is critical, because watching where airlines are on their personalization of passengers, so your PNR is showing up on your flight attendant's pad, and it's the right drink, the right selections at the right time. So for example, on Delta, for example, I love their old fashioned. It comes in a can, it comes up order. I would be tickled if they offered it to me when I was coming back late some afternoon. I would be horrified if they came up to me in the morning and said, Joe, do you like your old fashioned? I'm not that kind of drinker. So it's the right offering at the right time. Like, I like a coffee in the morning, not the old fashioned. I do not drink until I'm on my flight home. So it's important that they're, in the customization, it has to be integrated into the service. Like, for example, what I would recommend to a flight attendant that has that information on their pad from the PNR, because the passenger's opted in, it's like, would you like an old fashioned this afternoon, or would you like something different? And that way, I'm recognized as me, and also your NPS score goes up by 1 or 2 points with consistency of using the passenger's name. That's the one greatest opportunity I see for airlines is don't do one of these look down and look up. Like, get it down before you engage with the passenger and know what you're going to say rather than reading off the screen.
That's really interesting because I do want to add, so I spoke with Mark Cheney from the IAG loyalty group, and he also sits on the working group for the seamless airlines and heads up personalisation.
Yes.
And the conundrum that he said they've been facing is, who's flying? Is it Dr. Joe Leader on business, or is it Joe and family vacation?
Yep.
Now, from an airline perspective, can you differentiate whether that's going to be the challenge to go. They have different habits depending on where they're flying. So, do you see any kind of resolution or way that can be addressed? Like you said, timing support when they're offering a fashion?
PNR, like if your passengers are if my family's with me, they're normally in my record. If they're not, they're in the linked record. And the better airline GDS and intelligence systems can say, oh, Joe's in travel mode with his family. It's a whole different persona, and you're right. That's turn the floor over to Ben and to my colleagues at the end here to talk about the cost basis, because my experience is for smaller airlines, they can get kind of a more, I would say, an a la carte system that does what you need. But I would tell you that you have the dream scenario when you start an airline, when you're at the beginning, because you're small, you're nimble, you're able to serve your customers. I would tell you that when JetBlue started 20-something years ago, that the world needed an airline that was going to provide in-seat entertainment, a little bit more legroom and everything like that. Right now, the world is lacking airlines that are really connecting and caring with their customers on a personal basis. I think this is the new sweet spot. So if you can do that, because you can't be giant overnight, but you can forge a deeper connection. The other element that I see for in-flight entertainment and for connectivity is the number one time to sell your passengers on their next flight is while they're flying. Like an airline 15 years ago had 10 times the connectivity rate and 10 times the sales rate of the nearest other airline in the US because they were offering $5 off next flights by buying in-flight. Why is no one doing that today? Your customers flying, customers when they're traveling, they spend 7 times more on average than they do when they're hanging out the house. Get them to buy their next flight. Make it so it's changeable, make it so that they have flexibility, give them something, but you're in an ideal world. And I'll turn this over to my CSP friends.
So from a CSP content recommendation perspective, if you're starting an airline from scratch, consistency across your systems will make things easier. So the more hardware provider systems that you're working with, the age of those systems as well, having consistency across the fleet can be more difficult. So starting from scratch, consistency I think does make life easier in that regard, creating a simplified personalization experience on board. With that said, the CSP's role is to be able to work with any possible hardware provider out there, so it's not the make all and end all, if that's not the direction that you go with. But consistency I think is a good way to start.
Here's my suggestion. Be creative. I love what Joe said. You have a blank slate right now. You can do something that nobody other airline has done. There's massive airlines that can't move very fast to do anything because they're like a glacier trying to move around, right? You can be nimble right now, be creative. And on the cost, it's really it's up to you what that cost is. I mean, you can go out and try to impress the world, right, and spend a lot of money, or you can go step by step, understanding your passenger, be creative, and spend wisely as much as you can. So the cost question that's up to you. But I would say be creative, be different. Otherwise, you're like everyone else walking around this room, right? And good luck with that, because a lot of them fail. So.
Great. Okay, I think we're going to wrap it up. Thank you very much for joining us and for sharing your insights today, and thank you for taking the time to come and hear our discussion on personalisation.